All right, here we go. I want to respect everybody's time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just so you guys know, this panel is being recorded, so we can be able to share this out to other individuals that were not able to, view the panel in live version today. So that's why we have it on record. So if you're uncomfortable with being recorded, definitely, you can keep your camera off. You don't have to speak. You can just use the chat if you do have questions. We just want to make you aware of that, but this is just to share these vibes with everybody, okay? Thank you so much for joining today. It's so much appreciated. I hope you find this information helpful for you or others around you, because this is for the community. My name is Maya Robinson. I am a licensed social worker, and I am hosting today's panel discussion in honor of BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month, which stands for Black Indigenous People of Color. This event is sponsored by Be Chicago, a grant funded program by city colleges, making efforts to address different challenges, such as multi-victimization, community violence, mental health, and things like that around the surrounding the communities of Chicago. And one of the purposes that one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel, because no one should be hated because, they were born in a certain culture, or practice a certain religion, or is a certain race. And we want you to know that you are not alone in this. There's been a struggle with a lot of Black and Brown communities with seeking mental health, trusting mental health. So we wanted to let you know that you're not alone in that, you're not crazy, and that we can get through this together. We are better together. And speaking of working together, we have amazing panelists today that have been willing to drop some gems to educate, share, and hopefully facilitate empowerment for you. I will just say their names. I'll let them introduce themselves a little later. But we have Jasmine James, Austin Coar, and Marilyn Okoye, and Carmone Owens. I think he's on here, but if not, that's okay, because I want to hear gems from anybody who's willing to share, okay? So the reason why I wanted to put up culture, community, and connection is because that's a theme with Mental Health America. Mental Health America is an organization that provides mental health resources to all groups, but they put emphasis on certain groups like BIPOC, like LGBTQ, and et cetera. So this year their theme is culture, community, and connection. And I believe community engagement, culture preservation, representation, and all of that is a good way to advocate for BIPOC communities, and again, to help them be safe and feel safe when they're seeking mental health services. Because again, we work better together than apart, I feel. So as you ponder on this quote, I do like to check in to share, for everyone to share what they're feeling coming into this space. And so I'll use this space as well for the panelists to introduce themselves. You can either raise your virtual hand, or you can just unmute yourself, my amazing panelists, and just let us know how you're feeling coming to this space. And for those viewing the panel today, just use the chat to share how you're feeling. We want to know, because we want to be mindful of the information we're giving. So please use the chat, because there's a lot of y'all, and I really appreciate you guys joining in. But we're going to use the chat so we can make sure we respect everybody's time, okay? So any of my amazing panelists want to go first? Introduce yourself. Let us know how you're feeling coming to the space.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marilyn Okoye. I am a person with lived experience with depression, and I love opportunities like this because I love to share my story, because as Maya has pointed out, that community is important. Oftentimes we may not know, what's going on until we share our story, and then we begin to realize that, hey, that person understands where I might be coming from, and then we can grow from there, go and grow from there. So I'm a writer, a poet. I speak on this topic as often as I can, and I'll pass the mic to Austin.
Yes, there we go. Thank you for that. pass the mic.
Hey everybody, how you doing? First of all, thanks Maya for bringing us all together, giving us the opportunity to share our experiences, strengths, and areas that we have, and then enhance those weaknesses so that we can go out into the world and do some good work. So again, my name is Austin Core. I am a PhD student. By night, by day, I work for the DoD. I'm in the Air Force, and I work as an officer, as a paramedic lieutenant. So for the city of Birmingham. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. A lot of experiences outside of the country for me. So a lot of things that I look at for this will be more inside the country. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Jessica.
Jessica, you there? I know you're not a panelist, but if you want to check in, that's cool too. Okay, that's totally fine. This is a safe space. If you don't want to share, that is totally okay. Let's see. Anybody else want to check in? I can unmute you. We can definitely unmute your voice if you want to check in. Oh, she's here as she's at work. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll unmute you. There we go.
Okay, again, thank you very much, Maya. I know I'm not one of the panelists because I joined at the last moment, but my name is Ajay Kalaskar. I do work with Birmingham Mayor's office a little bit. I started communicating with them for one of the project, but let me give my background. I belong to Art of Living organization, and I don't know how much you guys have heard about it, but we operate from the space of belongingness. Yeah, I mean we are the founder Sri Ravi Shankar vision is to bring a smile on each and every face on this earth, but also create that one world family. So, and how to connect not only our inner self but people around us. Yeah, so that's what is about Art of Living, and we are celebrating what Maya is doing to bring everyone together, to make them aware that you are not alone. Same way we are celebrating World Culture Festival in Washington DC National Mall, if you guys know, and it's about celebrating diversity, different culture and humanity. So I welcome you all for that National Mall World Culture Festival happening on 29th, 30th September and October 1st. And I am a facilitator for stress management program, which is called SKY, which is 3-day, 9-hour program. We can more talk about it, but I think I do work with communities where we see that how can we close the gap between two humans, right? And how can we stay together in peace? Yeah. Now, thank you again, Maya, for inviting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
So I want to talk about this quote just really quick. I hope you were able to read through it. And I like this quote for this panel because it reflects basically meeting the person where they are. So if nothing else, I hope this encourages you to take it 1% at a time, because we know that sometimes mental health it can be taboo. It can bring some anxiety, around admitting it, seeking it, talking about it, et cetera. And so if you're in any of those stages, whether you're searching on Google for a therapist, even if you desire to seek some help in some fashion, that could be 1%, and 1% is better than 0. Okay, it's a step towards growth regardless. And I saw Jasmine just came in. Jasmine, do you want to check in? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you feeling coming to the space. You're on mute. There we go. I got you.
Okay. Sorry that I am late. I'm coming from another meeting. My name is Dr. Jasmine James. I'm a community psychologist here located in Chicago. My research is focused on community-based assets in Chicago's 20th Ward, which is Washington Park, Woodlawn, and Inglewood. I have been a CPS teacher for the past 8 years. It's crazy to say 8 years. And this year I'm leaving the classroom to navigate into a role as an SEO curriculum specialist, where I will be training school districts on social emotional learning skills for their students as well as their staff. So super excited about that. Outside of that, I'm a mom of a 3-year-old. He will be 4 on Halloween. So I am literally a 3-year-old all day. His daycare has been on summer vacation for 2 weeks. So I am a little bit exhausted. But I'm super excited to be here and get to know everyone. And yes, I'm checking in.
Thank you. Thank you for checking in. All right. So we're going to jump into this. I wanted to show this video because it covers a nice chunk of what we'll be talking about today. And it also does invite the uncomfortability piece around the topic that we're talking about today. So they do mention some heavy but true points about the society we live in and how, you know, minorities are treated. So if this information is too heavy for you, definitely take a break. You know, you could definitely, you know, end the meeting if you want to. You can leave if it becomes too triggering, because we're not trying to trigger or traumatize. We just want to bring more awareness. So do what you need to do to take care of yourselves if you feel, you know, the information is too heavy for you to handle. So we definitely want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. So I'm gonna let these ladies speak for themselves because it's some gems, okay?
Please welcome Melissa, Zaria, and Rhiannon.
Here in America, in every single state, they have a set of standards for every subject, a collection of lessons that the teacher is required to teach by the end of the term.
But the greatest lessons you will ever teach us will not come from your syllabus.
The greatest lessons you will ever teach us, you will not even remember. You never told us what we weren't allowed to say. We just learned how to hold our tongues. Now, somewhere in America, there's a child holding a copy of Catcher in the Rye, and there is a child holding a gun.
But only one of these things have been banned by their state government, and it's not the one that can rip through flesh.
It's the one that says F you on more pages than one, because we must control what the people say, how they think.
And if they want to become the overseer of their own selves,
then we'll show them a real one. And somewhere in America, there's a child sitting at his mother's computer, reading the homepage of the KKK's website. And that's open to the public, but that child will have never read To Kill a Mockingbird because the school has banned it for its use of the N-word.
Maya Angelou is prohibited because we're not allowed to talk about rape in school.
We were taught that just because something happens doesn't mean you are to talk about it.
They build us brand new shopping malls
So that we'll forget where we're really standing, on the bones of the Hispanics, on the bones of the slaves, on the bones of the Native Americans, on the bones of those who fought just to speak.
Transcontinental railroad to Japanese internment camps.
There are things missing from our history books, but we were taught that it is better to be silent than to make them uncomfortable. Somewhere in America,
private schoolgirls search for hours through boutiques trying to find the prom dress of their dreams,
while kids on the South Side spend hours searching through the lost and found, because winter's coming soon and that's the only jacket they have.
Kids are late to class for working the midnight shift.
They give awards for best attendance, but not for keeping your family off the streets. These kids will call your music ghetto. They will tell you don't talk right.
Then they'll get in the backseat of a car with all their friends,
sing about how they're about that life and we can't stop. Somewhere in America,
schools are promoting self-confidence
while they whip out their scales and shout out your body fat percentage in class.
Where the heftier girls are hiding away, and the slim-fit beauties can't help but giggle with pride.
The preppy kids go thrift shopping because they think it sounds fun.
But we go because that's all we've got money for. Because Mama works for the city. Mama only gets paid once a month. Somewhere in America,
a girl's getting felt up by a grown man on the subway.
She's still in her school uniform, and that's part of the appeal.
It's hard to run in knee socks and Mary Janes, and all her male teachers know it too. Coaches cover up star players raping freshmen after the dance.
Women are killed for rejecting dates.
But God forbid I bring my girlfriend to prom.
A girl is blackout drunk at the after party.
Take a picture before her wounds wake her.
How many pixels is your sanity worth?
What's a 4.0 to a cold jury?
What'd you learn in class today?
Don't talk loud.
Don't speak loud.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your head down.
Keep your eyes on your own paper. If you don't know the answer,
fill in C. Always wear earbuds when you ride the bus alone. If you feel like someone's following you, pretend you're on the phone. A teacher never fails.
Only you do.
Every state in America. The greatest lessons are the ones you don't remember learning.
All right. I know that was a lot. Like I said, they did speak on some heavy stuff, but I felt it was very powerful, more so than heavy, because they flowed with it, and also just noticing the uncomfortability of it. So anybody want to share like just their thoughts about the video, anything that stuck out to them? Feel free to unmute yourself, or use the chat as well. Hopefully I gave everybody permission. Hold on. I think I gave everybody permission. Oh, there we go. Okay, now you can unmute yourself if you want to share.
Yeah, that was definitely a very powerful piece, right off from the beginning, where it talks about the book, being banned and guns are not. I mean, in the climate that we're living in, it's really, I'm speechless beyond that. But just from the jump, everything that was said definitely is powerful and meaningful. And, the community needs to do better. All communities, we need to. I don't know, how do we get this out to, more people to see this, and hopefully it sets in. But it's so much truth, as you said, that's packed into this. And I can also see it being triggering for individuals that may have had some of these experiences, so definitely we have to honor that and hold space for that as well. But it's just some amazing words from these young women.
Yes, absolutely. And I like that. I actually like that they used comparisons, like you said, using the book, being banned versus guns, how the stereotypes and stigmas around sexual assault, in women, and like the being on the bones of the Native Americans, the slaves, like that was a really powerful thing to me, because I think that's the uncomfortability thing that a lot of us don't want to talk about when it comes to supporting BIPOC individuals. We don't want to talk about the history. We don't want to talk about the bad stuff that's happened to put us in that situation of the intergenerational trauma from others, and then from ourselves sometimes. Like, we need to have that conversation for sure. Like, let's talk about the history that's resulting in these mental health issues, or just people struggling, and they don't know how to seek it, So I really appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate it. Does anybody else want to share before we move on? Oh, somebody in the chat said, I thought the video was really powerful and heavy. It was a reminder of all things we experience, but not equipped with the tools to heal and grow through these traumatic experiences. Absolutely. Yes. All those issues, it was talking about all those issues, and that we don't talk about how can we grow from that, or how can we heal from that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. All right, so this next one is one of the topics we're going to talk about today. We came up with depression in the church. Some people know it as church hurt. And the points that we thought was like a common thing is the rejection, judgment, and guilt. And I'm gonna let Marilyn Okoye start this off. But before I go, there's somebody in the chat that said it's interesting that I do believe that the video is almost 10 years old and we have not made much progress. Yes, this video is old. I used this video when I was in grad school in 2017. So it is very old, but it's still talking about current situations now in 2023. Yeah, seems we're going backwards. So yeah, Marilyn Okoye, I'm gonna let you start off with the gems that you have regarding this stuff. I'm gonna play the video.
Okay, so depression in the church. So as I said, I am a person with lived experience of depression, and I was active in church. I grew up in the church. And at the point in my life when I began to experience depression, I must say that I was floored at some of the responses that I received, or reactions even that I received in the midst of this. It was like no one, initially, it was like no one seemed to understand. Later, though, I realized that not only they really didn't understand, they really didn't understand mental wellness, mental health. And I also began to realize that a lot of that may have come from, so when I grew up in the church, it was don't claim it. It was just pray about it.
Mhm.
It was, well, what did you do? And that leads to that feeling of rejection and judgment, because it almost became, if they saw you coming, they turned because they didn't want to hear it or something like that. It was a lot of different things. And so what I want to say to that, depression in the church, so there's this collective of people who may just not have understood. Now, I say this again after having gone through my healing process, because in the midst of that, I was like, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Am I, what sin did I commit? Am I not praying hard enough? It was a lot of those different things. And then not only that, as it touches here on guilt. I was active in the church and I was feeling guilty that I was, having thoughts of suicide. I couldn't get out the bed, crying every day. All of these different things was going on with me. But for me, one of the things that was rooted in me was, the word, or reading the Bible. I had learned to, read the Bible and do some research and begin to understand what was happening to me. And in doing that, it allowed me to extend grace, so to speak, where I realized again that some of our leaders in church were probably experiencing depression, but too embarrassed or ashamed to talk about it, because that is something that creeps up on us, not only in the church, but just in general. We're going about our lives, we're at work, and we don't want to tell anyone. So maybe our leaders were experiencing this shame and guilt or embarrassment. How can I be a pastor of a church and I'm depressed? I can't tell anyone that. And those type of things, and even in culture, in my home, in the Black community, it was something we didn't talk about. It was something that I heard growing up, that if you were experiencing depression or some mental distresses, you were crazy. Who wanted to walk around being classified as that? Nobody. So we all hid it as best we could, not really realizing that we wasn't hiding it so well, because we were irritable, yelling and screaming and cussing folks out, turning to alcohol, or other, choices that were not so good for our physical health and things like that. So it was just a plethora of stuff, not only our leaders, but our friends and other, church goers and things like that may have been experiencing this, but didn't know how to express it, or were too ashamed and embarrassed because what we experienced growing up in our home, growing up in our communities.
Absolutely.
And I just want to, before you play the video, I also want to say that I'm grateful, though, to see that some churches are getting it.
Yeah.
Some of our leaders, some of our members, they are talking about their own experience that they have had. And some have been so transparent to say that they didn't understand, that they didn't know, that they were embarrassed, that they were ashamed. How could they lead if they were experiencing that? And for me, again, it was digging in the word and seeing that there were actually people in the Bible that experienced depression. So I'll stop right there, maybe play the video, see if any questions, comments, and things come up.
For sure, for sure. And I want to just add before I play this video, a lot of what you talked about also, you said it too, it circles around the shame, like not knowing how to seek the help, but also ashamed to seek the help. So you don't even want to figure out how to do that because of the shame. And yeah, the pray about it, I can relate to all of that. So this audio is just a short audio of TD Jakes, and he describes his experience with just his relationship with his faith and his spirituality, and how as he got older and learned that, okay, I'm not perfect and they weren't perfect either. But if we knew each other and we weren't perfect together, we could have prayed about it or something. So I hope it brings some humor, but it also speaks to the points that Marilyn mentioned, just about the shame and rejection, judgment around it, because nobody wanted to talk about it. And so he felt some type of way. I'm gonna let you play.
With some sinner, and he judged me as a sinner, which changed my position. Now, I'm still struggling with some conditions. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been saved a long time. I know the word fairly well. I'm still struggling with some conditions. This is one of the things that separates the old church from the new church, because the old church used to live in denial. They would try to convince you that they had no issues. And what really, I was pointing Mother McCaskill out to Sister Paula, because when I was a young man, I backslid because holiness confused me. Holiness confused me because they told me they was holy. And I used to pray all the time. I used to pray because they had me so convinced that they was holy. I said, Lord, please make me as good as they are. They so clean, they don't think no evil, they don't feel no evil, they don't have no temptation. Make me like them. And I would feel guilty when I got around them, because they didn't seem to have no issues and look like they would know if you thought anything evil. I was so impressed with their holiness. And when I found out that some of them mothers dip snuff, it messed my mind up. It confused me so bad. It wasn't that they did snuff that hurt me. It was that they lied to me. If they'd have just told me they was human in the first place, it'd have helped me with how I saw myself. Oh, I'm still mad about it. Just tell me. I'm still hot about it. It's been over for 30 years. I'm still getting a fight. Because they made me feel filthy. If they'd have told me that they were struggling too, we could have had fellowship and we could have prayed for each other, and I could have still respected them. But because they lied to me, they confused me, and they made me want to quit.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And to what he said, if I can also add that, so there was a time I was in church, and one of the leaders had walked up to me and asked me how I was doing. And I just broke down and started crying. I couldn't even get a word out to say how I was doing, because they turned around and walked away from me so fast. And then I was like, what? You know, because we think our leaders are, you know, they're holy, they're righteous, nothing goes wrong. And if it does, you know, they have the words and the prayers to overcome it, you know. And then we later learn, as I said earlier, we are a collective people. We are a group of collective, imperfect people. And once again, realizing that, then in my experience, I began to educate myself to understand what was happening with me. And I did that through Google, through friends, through the word and through my doctors, and then I began to learn about mental health and the support that's available to us. And we don't have to be ashamed of that. And so that's why I say every chance I get, I love to share, my story and the breadth of the experience, because you just never know someone that might be sitting there listening to you that had this experience in church as they were going through, and they're sitting there and they're angry. They can't get to their complete healing because they're holding in this anger at the church. Again, this collective people, this leader, this pew member, someone that just did not get it at that time for them. And I want us truly to walk in complete healing. And that is an ongoing process. Like Pastor Jake said, I still have conditions and things like that. It is an ongoing process, and there is nothing wrong with that. Well, when am I going to get to it? Well, life happens. So you're gonna get to it and be well, experience, and there are no conflicts or issues or conditions. Then something else may come up, not necessarily with you, but someone close to you that you care about. And that does have an impact on you. But remember that as long as there's breath in our body, healing is an ongoing process. No one has completely arrived yet. It's ongoing, and it's a beautiful process when we connect with the right people, the right community, the right counselors, and different things like that. So I want to encourage you today, if you're experiencing that, to reach out and check out some of the things that are here, resources and things that are available for you.
Yes, yes. You said it perfectly. Look, culture, community, connection. You spoke on all of that. Absolutely. So speaking of the community and resources, this is one of our QR codes for our resources, and I just put the link to it in the chat. I do have LGBTQ resources and just a general booklet QR code for plethora of resources, and I'm only one person, so I definitely welcome other people to share their links, share their organizations, because I love to add on and continue to add on to these lists, because we want to be able to provide resources for the community, because this is just one way to bring awareness and all that. So we want to be able to for you to take something with you. We want that as well. So I have a link in the chat. You can scan a QR code with your phone. And if you still need the link, I'll put that in the chat again towards the end. Okay, so we have the next topic is navigating emotions and family. And I can, this is my chunk right here. And I think Jasmine wanted to come in on this, but I will definitely speak on this. This is just a short video, like it's a couple seconds just to describe family and just the overwhelmness that it can bring when you're trying to say that you're struggling or say that you're going through, but they still have these expectations of you. They still have these obligations from you. And you might want to respond like this.
It's been a long day!
And maybe adding some curse words in there too. Like it be like that. It be like that sometimes, and it's okay. It's understandable. It's a transition, and so I would definitely. I'm glad you thought it was funny. I could definitely speak on the boundaries piece when it comes to navigating those emotions and your family. Boundaries is something that it's not to say, I should have played another video, but this is not to say that we're beefing or that I'm mad at you. It's to say, look, I didn't appreciate it this way. So in the future, can we handle it this way? Or just saying no and saying no, but I still love you. That's what boundaries can look like. A lot of times people, and just in my experiences as well, when you put boundaries in place, some people can take it offensive. They can take it as an insult, but it's not an insult. It's a way to take care of yourself. especially when you have people that they love you, you know, they don't want you in harm's way, but sometimes they don't understand. They don't understand those boundaries. And so again, they take offense to those boundaries. But boundaries is a really important point to self-care, because you're basically creating a line. This other video I had, she explained it perfectly and passionately. She's like, "You're not going over this line. You're not going over this line. That don't mean we beefing. That don't mean we on the outs. But you can't go over this line in my life." is what she said. So that's what it means. Just you can't go over a line, and that's okay. And I can still love you. We can still go on trips. You know, we can still have that connection. But there's just some things in place that I can't allow you to you know, ruin or even break that line. You know. So I definitely have the communication capacity, but I'm gonna let Jasmine speak on that as well, and then I'll add my little 2 cents at the end.
Yeah, so excuse me, with a lot of the clients that I work with, and there are a lot of family dynamics that are happening. And what I always tell the folks that I work with is that before you're going and setting boundaries or seeking kind of like any healing in the family space, you need to understand the people's capacity in your family, not only just their emotional capacity, but their ability to communicate to you or their own needs. Because I feel like we sometimes are on our healing journeys and we begin to get frustrated because, let's say I'm having a conversation with my mom and I'm like, "Mom, this is what happened when I was a kid. It's affecting me as an adult. And let's talk about it." Before I even go into that conversation, I may have in my mind kind of what I want the situation to play out as, how I want my mom to respond, but it may not always be realistic about where my mom is at and her ability to either communicate with me in a way that I'm looking for her to, or even her ability to just process her own emotions. And so I feel like sometimes when we're getting into these situations, we're frustrating ourselves because we don't have realistic expectations of the capacity of the folks around us. So what I always like to tell my clients is that you really have to think about, like, if this person is not able to communicate with me or like emotionally meet me where I am, then I need to think about what realistically can I take away from this conversation or this situation or this relationship. And it may not always, I feel like, you know, the bad thing about social media is sometimes we get these very glorified kind of expectations of healing. It's all of these videos where people sitting on the couch, they're sitting down with their dad or their mom or their sisters, and they're having these very emotional conversations. And at the end, everybody is hugging and high-fiving. And it's just like, and then we think that's what our healing journey is going to look like. And that is not necessarily reality. So just thinking about, like, one, where the person that you're talking to is at in their own life. If they're not at a place where they're going to heal or where they're wanting to heal or they don't know where to start, then you know that the conversation is not going to be like this very coming to Jesus moment where y'all are going to hug at the end, you know? And so maybe it's just, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling. I just wanted to tell you. And I know you may not have the capacity to respond, or you may need some time to process. So maybe we can circle back in 2 or 3 weeks." And I think that gives you a little bit less frustration. And then it also gives them the ability to determine where they can meet you at. And then I think that plays into boundaries, because if you're talking to a person, you tell them, "This is what I want to express to you. This is how I'm feeling," and they're not able to do that. Then, like Maya said, you follow up with your boundary. Well, that means that I won't be at the next family event. Like, I'm gonna need to take some space because I'm not getting the response that I'm needing at the time, or I need some time to process on my own. But I think we have to be very rooted in, like, what is the capacity of others, but also what's the capacity of ourselves. If you know that you're going into a conversation with somebody that is very highly frustrating for you, you need to know that maybe that's a day where you're not trying to go back to work, or maybe that's not a day where you're trying to go to a group event. Maybe that's a day where you've had this conversation, your capacity for it was very, very low. It took a lot of energy, and maybe instead you're sitting at home kind of taking a bath, watching a movie. So honoring your capacity as well as honoring the capacity of those in your family, I feel like gets us to a place where we are able to realistically start making those steps to heal, instead of being frustrated when things don't pan out the way that we want them to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think too, I know for me, the hardest thing for me when I was trying to create my boundaries was the guilt of, thinking that I'm being mean, by saying no, or just saying, look, this is the cutoff time. I struggle with that because I'm like, this is my family. Like, I want to be there for them. I want to support them. But I also learned in sometimes the hard way that when I did that, I just didn't have any more energy for myself. I didn't have any energy for me to keep going. I gave my best. I gave my best to my family, and now I'm over here trying to refuel and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely agree, having that space to either observe and just see like, okay, maybe they're not this person emotionally, but they're definitely this person, like maybe in the physical sense of support, and having those type of conversations. I do think having that conversation too can be a challenge because of the uncomfortability of it, so it's definitely trial and error. Marilyn, you have something to add?
I just wanted to add, coming from, again, talking about culture and the household that I grew up in and my parents, I grew up in a generation where you just didn't say, you didn't express yourself to your parents. You couldn't, and if you did, you got popped, so that basically just stopped, all of that in its tracks, right? So now I'm having children, now I'm married and I'm having children. And some of that I grew up with, I brought over, into my parenting styles, right? But then as my children got older, I have 3. One in particular, she was very well at expressing herself and these boundaries. And I was just like, girl, you better, But in the midst of all of that and my own journey, I did learn the importance of these boundaries and at least respecting how someone felt, whether I could accept it or not. If there was an issue, and she tried to, oftentimes express that to me, what's the word I'm looking for? Respectfully, but it still stung, So, but rather I'm grateful that I, have been able to make those adjustments and learn and respect, those boundaries. And then I had to set some boundaries myself against, even some of my own children. And it's hard, some of my kids. But, and it's hard, like you guys are saying, to do that, with especially your loved ones, because again, offense, you don't love me, they try to, and it's like, no, I just want to live in peace, I don't want to argue and fight and all of that all the time. I want to discuss things peacefully. I want to agree to disagree, which is okay, So I just wanted to add that because it was hard, as I transitioned to my parenting style from what I learned, but then as I evolved and began to understand or had my own life experiences, I could begin to appreciate, respect, and honor, those boundaries and what that meant for me and for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to, give a short shout out in the chat. Just feeling like it can be a load. It can feel like a load. And I can relate to that as well, especially feeling like that emotional load, because you set your boundaries and then they react in a way to make you feel guilty, like, well, where did this come from? Why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? Or they end up talking about you to other family members, which makes it worse. Like I have 7 siblings. I have 6 siblings. And when something happens between one of my siblings, my mother is definitely calling me, and I know it's vice versa with my other siblings. So that can escalate it. And so I say that to say, definitely take time to honor your boundaries, because we have these boundaries. We want these boundaries, but are we honoring them for ourselves? How serious are we taking them? Or are we just saying it? And I'm saying that because I said it, but practicing it was very, 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 very hard. So definitely take your time to honor and appreciate your boundaries. And if somebody else doesn't appreciate them, again, just navigating how to act accordingly. There we go. Act accordingly with them moving forward, but still love them, but just act accordingly moving forward when they can't give you what you need as far as that support. All right, I'm gonna kick it over to Mr. Kaur to talk about navigating mental health services. What you got for us, Mr. Kaur? Is it Kaur?
Yeah, it's core.
Kaur,
So
okay.
like I think that just to kind of go back on the conversation, I think like it's almost equally as important how you say it than what you say.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're putting those, you have to put some, you have to put a little bit of empathy in it so that the person is open enough to receive that message. Because if you deliver it because you think that you're raw and real and I'm just giving it to you how you need, like they may not even be receptive of it, even though it may be the truth. But if you deliver it in a digestible way, I think the person can be way more receptive of it. So that was a good one. That was a really good one. But like, so we're navigating health services, right? So like I said earlier, guys, I work in emergency medicine. I work in the streets of Birmingham. I see a little bit of everything. I've spent some time internationally doing some humanitarian and mission work. So a lot of street interaction. So I'm gonna give some numbers. Numbers are my thing. So this is data from the CDC in 2021. Per 100,000, this is for the United States, per 100,000, about 14% of people committed suicide per 100,000 people, right? That's a big, enormous number. In 2021, there were nearly 50,000 suicide deaths. And to add on to that, about 15 million 15 million physician visits for just depression, for strictly depression. As a primary diagnosis. So like we have a big problem. And then in going to your primary care physician, that's a traditional way of trying to seek help. But it's not always the first sought way. A lot of people don't always go that way. In 2019, about 57 million people visited their primary care physician for some form of a mental disability or mental disorder. And just the emergency department alone, 6.2 million people went to the doctor just to try and get some type of care because they don't either have a primary care physician, they don't have access to free or affordable mental health care, don't have insurance or things like that. Again, being in Birmingham, very rural, doesn't necessarily mean we have all the resources, especially being a part of the Black Belt, one of the poorest regions in the country. So. But between 2018 and 2020, nearly 1 million people on average continuously young adults went to the emergency department. 1 in every 10 ED visits for Black and brown people was about mental health disorders. 1 in 10. So each person, every time I go out into the streets, at least one of every 10 calls I'm gonna get is gonna be somebody calling about mental disorder. And to give you all a little bit more perspective of that, that's double the rate of our white counterparts, right? So things like that are plaguing communities. And so bringing awareness up to that and looking at ways to like raise accessibility. How do we do that? What does that look like? First, we got to address the family and the friends and the coworkers and understanding that seeking treatment isn't a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of personal, like I'm not able to handle this, I'm not strong enough, right? We have to be able to deconstruct that. Another big challenge being in the Black Belt, one of the poorest regions in the country, is the lack of affordable medical care or the access to it. When you do get a job, or you do get a good job, or I have a good job, I work for this big corporation, and you utilize the services they provide to you, there's a sense of reprisal in the back of your head. Like, if I turn this in, Are they going to treat me differently? Are they going to report me? Is the doctor going to tell them that I'm doing this or I'm doing that, or this is my current coping mechanism and I want to find a more healthier coping mechanism? Will there be some type of reprisal? If I do seek mental health help, will that mental illness be flagged on my medical records? Does that mean I'm no longer a preferred, do I get preferred treatment or provider? Will my premiums go up? Things like that. Am I still eligible for life insurance? It's bigger than just being able to go and see a primary care physician, but also navigating those spaces that don't allow you to be who you truly want to be because of that fear of reprisal, because that fear of isolation, that fear of being treated differently or mistreated by your friends or family or coworkers. So there's a big stigma behind that. And right now we have a lot of people pushing us in a positive direction and new, healthier ways to kind of seek that help, whether that be apps, social media. Our celebrities are doing it. I personally have the Calm Out app. I use the Calm app. It's like $60 a year. And I drive a lot. So I'll play it in the car, I'll drive, just listening to something, you know, I know Will Smith isn't always in the news for the best of things, but because he's battling his own mental challenges, but he's a big proponent of that. So getting our celebrities and our celebrity leaders out there speaking out against this helps deconstruct that stigma. So but there are a lot of different resources that are available. That just doesn't mean that they're available in the communities that need them the most. And that's where we have the big challenge at. So as we continuously move forward, pushing awareness, as we continuously push acceptance, hopefully we can find new ways to introduce services to people. So yeah, that's my thing on it. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for that information, the stats, because I think knowing the stats is a part of that awareness, right? Like knowing the need, knowing the struggle, like what are they doing without, like that's important to know. And I think that's a part of the other uncomfortability piece, is just when you see what the need is, you see how many people are being impacted by it. What can we do? Like, what can we do to support that? But I don't think people want to see those numbers because they don't want to see the overwhelming numbers and possibly, you know, try to do something about it. So I really appreciate you bringing the numbers in there, and then mentioning, you know, the Calm app and other mental health apps, and just social media in general is promoting mental health a lot more. And I do think that, like, other non-traditional things like peace circles, which is an indigenous practice, dancing, you know, black and brown people love to dance. I know I do. And
I'm a yoga guy. I love some yoga.
Drum circles, things like that come back to the culture. And I know we have mostly Black individuals on here. I did invite other people to join, so I'm not singling out any race or anything like that. But I know that this traditional services can be, you know, taboo with Black and brown individuals. Like we mentioned earlier, just the idea of talking about it, like sharing your business. Somebody mentioned in the chat, like, will they report me if I do share this information and things like that? So the traditional piece or the non-traditional piece, I think, should be incorporated a little bit more. It is in most organizations that I interact with. But again, it's a long way to go. We got a long way to go. So incorporating those non-traditional culture pieces in there, I think, is a good way to an easier way for people to access healing, because they're seeing it's not just the identified mental health terms, you know, or identified diagnosis. There are other ways that you can heal and still, you know, maintain your culture and maintain your practices and things like that. All right, we coming up on time here, so I'm gonna play just a little bit of this video. But this is just a general thing that we kind of just talked about already, with just some of the issues around why BIPOC individuals don't seek mental health, or it's hard to seek mental health, and things like that.
psychologist. There are at least 3 common myths, I think, in communities of color and in the field about mental health. One is that communities of color are hard to serve. They're not hard to serve if we as a field know how to serve them. So you have things like, the 50-minute hour, you have things like primarily doing services in an office. We don't usually meet them in their homes or their environments. We put the onus on the communities of color to learn our ways of doing things in the mental health field, which is problematic because the mental health field states that we are there to serve people and serve the community. 2 is that communities of color kind of oppose the idea of mental health. It's not the notion of mental health or wellness. In fact, those ideas of taking care of oneself and family, community run deep in a lot of communities of color for generations historically. But it's this kind of new, if you want, a new way of mental health that we've established. The way the message is delivered, and that I think is not always congruent with communities of color. So we need to look at how we're delivering that message. 3 is that communities of color are the only communities that have a stigma around mental health, and that's just simply not true. We can see across the country that mental illness and mental health in general still carry a stigma with it. It's unfair, and it again further marginalizes communities of color if we see them as the only communities that have a stigma around mental health.
All right. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that video?
I think big word was survival. A
You said
lot
the
of
big word was
people
what?
survival.
Oh, survival.
How
Mhm.
like we all are trying to survive, but there are people out here who are truly trying to survive and are seeking the help but aren't yielding the results that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Survival mode is definitely a thing, I think, for a lot of Black and brown individuals, just surviving and feeling like they have to either assimilate to become successful, or feeling like they just have to keep doing what they don't have to address their emotions. They don't have to address, even physical medical conditions sometimes, because we feel like we have to work and work and work, or nobody's going to care for us in the way that we feel is needed. I could say that I was one of those people before COVID. When I got sick, got the sniffles, I was like, I don't have time to go to work. I don't have the time to be sick. I got to go to work. I got this and this to do. COVID was a learning situation for sure. I'm staying my behind home. But that was a part of like surviving, because I'm like, I gotta keep doing this, I gotta keep doing that so I can maintain the successful part of me that this world wants me to do. So that is something I definitely wanted to point out with that as well. The survivor mode is big. All right, so we're coming down on, oh, my bad. We're coming to an end shortly. We have just a few more slides left. But again, this is another QR code for the resources. I will put the link in the chat. And again, I definitely welcome people to share their links, share info, and I will also put my email in the chat. So if you need to send some stuff later, then that's fine too. All right. We're going to keep on going. This is the last point we're going to talk about. And then the next one is just the call to action about what we all talked about today. So anxiety around admitting mental health. And the 2 points that came up to us was shame and fear. And we talked about those 2 things in all of the topics already. So what do you think is, and any of the panelists can speak when they feel like it. Why do you feel there is shame and fear around admitting mental health?
I like to say for shame and specifically shame, but fear as well. It's because of, like you said, the things that we talked about, the rejection, the judgment, and then the guilt that we place on ourselves. It was certainly part of the process, and even part of my healing process, to be honest, as I look back on the journey for it. I mean, again, I was going to church. I was active in the church. I had family and friends that would come to me and ask me to pray for them. And I remember when it got to the point where I had to tell, some of my family members, you know what, I'm not in the right space to pray for you right now. And I think the first time I heard myself say that, it was hard, but it was the truth. Mm-hmm. And so I was embarrassed, to have to tell someone not only that I was experiencing depression, but I took medication, to help me with that. And as I often said, I found out later in life that, I had family members that was taking medication for depression or some form of mental distress. And they oftentimes refer to it as a nerve pill. So I grew up, this nerve pill was just some other type of medicine, like an aspirin or something, So I didn't know, that. So then when I had to take this medication to help me, and it helped, it did help, and it helped right away. But I was still embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it initially, that I was taking medication, because I was afraid of what people would think of me. Part of it, again, had to do with that you're crazy, concept that we grew up hearing, or that I grew up hearing. So those are some of the things that, I dealt with in admitting, but I tell somebody now, that I've dealt with depression off and on top of that, not just one time, as a major episode in my life, but off and on throughout my life. And what I've learned are, these coping mechanisms and other things to help me, like you guys said, exercising, eating better, drinking water, all these different things. So it can be a lot, but the journey it's a beautiful journey. I just can't keep, not coming back to that. It's scary, but it's a beautiful journey. It's very scary,
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, finish.
I was just gonna say again, and that's just, my experience. I know, again, I'm speaking personally when I say that it's a beautiful experience, because it wasn't beautiful in the midst of it. It certainly was not. So don't let me make you think that it was scary and it was horrible and it was overwhelming. But I did experience everything, that we talked about here, and shame and fear was foremost on that experience.
Yeah. And I would say I was going to add to your point. I would say it became beautiful for me. It became beautiful. I like that you mentioned that it wasn't beautiful starting off, but it does become beautiful, because you know yourself, you're learning yourself, knowing your do's and your don'ts, so it becomes a beautiful experience. And I can say for me, in my experiences with mental health, shame and fear was the forefront. And I also take antidepressants for medication, and the shame and fear around me taking it was, dang, I can't do this by myself. I can't do this by myself anymore. I need some help, literally. That's what came to my mind every time. And I would try to take breaks from it or wean myself off of it. And it went left every time. And so that alone was hard for me to say, okay, it's all right to need help. It's okay to get some assistance. And it doesn't mean that you're less capable or less adequate. It just means that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have help, because you'll be able to increase your level of learning, increase your level of being in general. Like you'll be able to do stuff better, basically, with help. So that's something that I've learned. Like when you help, you can do it good by yourself, but when you have help, is less of a burden, or it feels less of a burden. It feels less heavy. And that's what that medication has done for me. I'm definitely in a better place now. I'm actually not on it anymore. But I definitely still am supportive of it if that's what you need. But that shame around like not being able to do it by yourself was something really heavy for me. All right. Somebody put in the chat, as a Black woman, how did you know it was actually depression and not just stresses of life? Can you share what was the breaking point that made you realize you need? Oh, this is a good question. So I'm a wait to the end for this question. This is a very, very good question. But I want us to unpack that towards the end. We're almost finished. We're almost finished for sure. Did anybody else want to add something about the anxiety around admitting mental health before I move on?
I was also going to say, similar to the video we just watched about intergenerational trauma, a lot of the shame and fear that we carry is not always our own, especially coming from generations. Like, we have to think about in the context of America, our parents and grandparents did not grow up in the era of like going to therapy. Yeah. They grew up in the era where, like, if you admitted that you were a Black person struggling with your mental health, you were institutionalized in oftentimes psychiatric wards that were very detrimental to Black people. So a lot of the fear that we have when it comes to admitting our mental health has been passed down to us from our parents and our grandparents because they grew up in a different generation. Fortunately, we're in a society where therapy is starting to become normalized, and people are more comfortable expressing their need for help. But when you are raised in environments where we don't oftentimes know what our elders have experienced when it comes to mental health, or even wanting to admit their own mental health struggles, I think it's very hard for us to understand why we may have some of the shame and fear that we have ourselves. Because oftentimes when you step back and think about it, you like, am I really scared to go to therapy, or am I scared because of all the things that I've heard about why I shouldn't go to therapy, or what has happened to somebody who has went to therapy? And so I think that we really have to work on healing generational trauma across the board from our parents and our grandparents. And if I'm a mom, so healing myself for my son, to ensure that if he is ever in a place where he is like, I need some assistance, that I'm not the person that's in the house that's like, oh, therapy, this, and this, that I'm really like modeling those, like, say, those healthy practices to him and creating an environment where he can be open and honest. And so I think if you are somebody that's finding yourself being anxious about wanting to admit that you need help, think about it from like, is this my anxiety that I'm carrying? Or is this anxiety that I'm carrying from the people around me due to the things that I've heard, or the things that I've experienced, or the things that they've heard and they've experienced? And if it's not your own anxiety, then push yourself to really like seek help, because it may work for you in ways that it didn't work for other people. But also, like, I was very close to my grandma and her generation. They're like, literally, if somebody called and said you were struggling with your mental health, one, either your kids were getting taken away, or two, you were going to a psych ward. And if we know anything about the history of health with Black people, psych wards, people were being abused, assaulted, sores left in their bed, TAD, shock therapy, like a whole bunch of stuff that we don't often think about when we're thinking about why sometimes our elders have the perceptions of things that they do. They are coming from very traumatic situations when it comes to mental health. So giving grace to them, but also detaching their experience from our own so that we are not afraid to get the help that we need.
Yes, girl, you said that. Okay, you said that. I appreciate that so much, because
yes, indeed.
Yeah, like it basically learning to unlearn it, and like you said, detach, because some of that stuff, like the reason why I'm afraid of taking, or I was shameful of taking those medications, was what I've learned and what I was told about medication and just around that area. So girl, you spit some gems right there. I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. We almost done, y'all. Thank y'all so much for sticking with us. This is just a video to give that grace, to let you know that it's okay. It's a process, and you deserve self-care. You deserve the best help that you need, okay? And just because you are a certain race, practice a certain religion, in a certain culture, doesn't mean you're less worthy. You are worthy of this stuff. And this guy spills it out really good.
Deep root menu to skip to a previous scene. Ask yourself, how many trips did you almost take? How many sights have you almost seen? How many moments have you lost thinking about the next one? Thinking that once you get this or get there, maybe that will be the best one. Life has taught me that all we will ever have is now. But let me be perfectly clear. I'm not saying to quit your job, even though I know you deserve a 6-month vacation twice a year. But how about small steps, short trips, with long dances, no distractions. Spend time with family instead of coworkers. Meditation instead of aggravation. Replace our screensavers with sunrises. Palm pilots with palm trees. Jam copy machines with... Man, I really hate jam copy machines. The most precious thing we have in life are moments. Let's make the most of them before they disappear. Let's see the world while we still can, and cherish those while they're still here. Because when our lives are almost over, it won't matter how much money we made, or hours we worked, or times we got employee of the month. What we will look back on are the memories we made, the hours we spent with those we loved, and were we father of the month, mother of the year, friend of a lifetime. Holidays should be a time where we go away and come together. From now on, let's take our whole vacation and be fully present, creating memories that will last forever.
Okay, this video spoke to me personally in so many levels, because as a Black woman, I felt I've had to work twice as hard than my Caucasian counterparts. And this video, amongst other things that we talked about today, helped me understand my worth and prioritizing me more, because I'm just as important as my family members that I want to support. I'm just as important as my clients and the community I serve. I am just as important. So it's important for me to take those breaks and take those vacations and make moments, not just accolades, you know, like he said, you know, employee of the month and stuff, making moments last versus just those tangible things that society deems successful. So this video really helped me put things in perspective. Like I'm just as important, and I need to give the same or more energy to myself that I do with others. So I just want to, someone, you just unmute yourself, you can. What is one thing that you feel like we all can do to encourage mental health and wellness, and just embracing who we are within those things? How do we encourage mental health with like BIPOC communities? How can we encourage that a little bit more? On top of having stuff like this, I know this is an option as well, but there's other things. There's like either phrases or just something that you can say to support someone who is struggling to seek mental health, or just to seek support in general, based off of their religion, based off of their culture. What is something you can say or do to encourage mental health?
I don't always want to be the first one to talk, but I was trying to give a little time, but I know we're pressed for time. But I wanted to say, you know, for me, sharing my story is one. Being transparent about my experiences is another. And by that, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, I mean, I made some bad choices that led to some of my depressive, you know, depression as well. You know, so that transparency, sharing the story so someone can know that they're not alone, and that there's a thread of common experience, or, you know, that you've said that they may have experienced that as well, that may spark a conversation. Like the question that was answered, well, how did you know it was this and not that, you know? I'll stop there, but I would love to address that question as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the last QR, actually no, second to last. The last one is our approach survey. We definitely need that, but this is the last resource QR code. This is the general booklet that I was talking about earlier, where there's a mixture of resources, community-wise, mental health agencies. There's some self-care things in there, like some massage places, different resources to help you be your best self. So I put the link in the chat as well. If you're not able to access the QR code, that's for you. And so, yes, we're gonna get to that question. Let me go back to it. What happened to it? Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. So the question was, as a Black woman, how did you know it was actual depression and not just the stressors of life? Can you share what was the breaking point that made you realize you needed intervention? And I'll pass that to you, Marilyn. I have an answer too, but I'll let you go first.
Okay, so for me, when things were happening and I started feeling like really down, and I was crying a lot, and there was my marriage was failing, and my parents, they were having some health challenges. So I started to feel, a little overwhelmed, and different things was happening. But for me, also what was happening in my body, in my own body, is my thyroid was off. And in my research, I learned that symptoms of thyroid hyper or hyper meaning is overactive and that is producing too much hormone, and under is not producing enough, but both can cause symptoms of depression. And so as I was going through this experience, I did ask myself the question, well, which one came first, the thyroid issue or the depression? Because I had life experiences going on, then I had some things going on in my body that, could have triggered these symptoms that I was experiencing. But the thing for me that I knew I needed help is I had my third child, who was a baby at the time, and I was nursing. I could no longer, not only did I have problem getting up out of the bed to get ready for work, or I was late every day because I was crying after everyone left the house to get myself together to get to work, but I could no longer nurse my child. I did not have the energy, the desire, and those things. And I knew this is a baby who has no, can do nothing, need my help. And I knew I needed to help myself. And in the process, because I was already, in counseling and different things like that. And that's when I decided to, take medication even for what I was experiencing. So it's a plethora of things that, could be going on and the symptoms, but the life experiences that I was having with my marriage, even having a baby, which can cause postpartum depression. It was just a number of things for that. But I knew when I could no longer nurse my child, I needed to do something more to help myself, help my family as well, and my baby, my little baby, and just my other two children as well, and be there for my parents too as they were ill.
Yes, absolutely. And just to add to that, one of the things that made me realize I needed intervention was I actually started thinking about suicide. I thought about hurting myself a lot because I'm a survivor of sexual assault. And so it was a very, very dark place for a very, very long time. And it took a counselor to describe my behavior. In addition to, like you said, the hysterical crying, I was really in a mood where I didn't want to be around anybody. I wanted to constantly isolate myself. And then just me as a social worker, that made it difficult. I was being triggered a lot in my job at the time. And so my doctor actually recommended some antidepressants, and I was like, hell no. At first. But she also described, and she was a Black doctor too. So I definitely recommend get a doctor in your culture, race, because they connect with you on a better level. Okay. Your culture, your race, I recommend that. And so she told me how it's common that Black and brown people don't take medication because they're afraid. They're afraid of how they're going to react, you know, how their body's going to react, afraid of feeling crazy. And so I'm like, oh, she just thought everything I thought already. And so that helped me feel better about it, because this is coming from another Black woman. And then the counselor described just the behaviors. It wasn't just, she didn't make it like a medical thing. She made it, this is what I'm seeing. This is why I'm concerned. You know, so she didn't come at me just, oh, you're dealing with depression, so you need to do this and this and this. It was more of a conversation than like an appointment, you know. So those are some of the things that helped me get into that intervention, and just realizing like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel like my life isn't worthy, or I don't feel like my life isn't enough. And just thinking about my siblings, like I'm the oldest and it's 7 of us. So I'm thinking about my siblings and just like, I don't want to leave them. So that was my motivation. Like I didn't like feeling like that. I didn't like even thinking about taking my own life, or even thinking about hurting myself. I didn't like how that felt for me. So that helped me get my foot in the door, like get myself through the door and to that doctor's appointment, for her to tell me, yeah, I understand this is a common thing with us Black folks, but this is needed because da 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 da. So that was something that I wanted to add to that. Okay. We are at the end, y'all. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know we are over time, but these gems were just so good. I couldn't cut anybody off. So this is the QR code for our post survey. I'm putting the link in the chat right now. Please fill that out. Like I said, this is sponsored by Be Well Chicago. It's a grant funded program. So we need that information from you so we can continue to do stuff like this, and also give us feedback on how we can do better, information to add or take away, things like that, and other ways that we can support you. And I put my email in the chat as well. So I am a licensed social worker. So if you need to check in or something like that with me, I am okay with doing that as well. I'm gonna put my email back in the chat for you, because I understand this is a lot of information and some of it was heavy. So if you need to do a quick check-in with me, I am okay with that as well. Any other questions? Anybody wanted to unmute themselves, talk about what they learned today, how they feel coming, leaving the space? You can use the chat or unmute yourself. I think you can mute yourself. Yeah. Okay. It's okay if you don't want to share. I'm totally okay with that too.
I just was glad to hear about, just the shared experiences, from the panelists who spoke, especially Marilyn. I mean, because it's just so taboo to talk about it, especially in the Black community. And I come from a Caribbean background. I'm Haitian, and we never talk about it. So it's just great to hear about, from the shared experience perspective. So I really appreciated that.
Awesome. I'm so glad. That makes me feel good. Definitely makes me feel good. I'm a bit emotional, but Pam, I understand, girl. I understand. Like, take your time, 1% at a time, 1% at a time. And you are worthy. You are worthy. So feel that emotion. You got it. You got it.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
all right, guys. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with you on that one about feeling, that emotion. Don't suppress it, allow yourself. That is a part of the healing process, is feeling, those things.
Yeah, and it does feel bad. Like it can feel bad. It can feel uncomfortable. Like nobody wants to feel that heaviness, that right. Tightness in your chest. It's not a pleasant feeling. But it is important to explore that and sit with
Right.
that, not get stuck, but
Right.
to sit with that emotion, to understand why you're feeling this way, because you're feeling that way for a reason, and it's for an
Right.
important reason. So
Right.
definitely take time to give it that space. And